People compare things as a natural cognitive process to understand, evaluate, and make decisions about the world around them. It's a pretty helpful evolutionary adaptation when trying to decide between eating a ripe apple or a rotten one. But it can be extremely detrimental when applied to our progress in life. My guest, Greg Kruger, and I talk about how comparison is a lack mindset. In his words, comparison is the thief of authenticity. When people compare themselves to others, they often adopt behaviors, goals, or lifestyles that don't align with their true selves, leading to a disconnection from their authentic identity. And because we are often comparing our middle to somebody else's end, comparison is also a lie. We dig into this concept and how to build authentic confidence that doesn't need to compare to anything external, using the power of awareness to make our blind spots visible, and how to use the breath to release trauma. So welcome to another episode of Hard for Life.
You are listening to the Hard for Life podcast with Thomas Scott.
There's two things that are really present for me in my personal journey right now. One is comparison. Right? We've heard this saying, never compare your middle to somebody or your beginning to somebody else's middle, or never compare your middle to somebody else's end. But it's deeper than that. And I'm realizing that, and I was going to make a post on this yesterday, and it'll probably come out today, that comparison is the thief of authenticity.
Whoa.
So if I say comparison is the thief of authenticity, as I navigate the expansion of my coaching business, as I navigate the expansion of my passions, so often when we're online, people will say, oh, this is how you do it. You've got to have these followers and use this AI. And if you're not here, you're not going to make it. And there's so much negative programming that is happening, and so much opportunity for us to say, oh, I need to do it your way.
Yeah.
And if I'm comparing to how somebody else has done it and they've blown up and I want to be like that, it's okay to want to expand, to excel, to create something that's similar, but I don't want to compare to the point where I no longer use an authentic voice. So that's what came to me, is like, comparison is the thief of authenticity, and therefore comparison is the thief of your purpose. So navigating comparison, navigating the realization that I, at 49 years old, that I'm at this place in my journey, and how do I most powerfully accept it, allow it, and be really whole with it, and just really be grateful for exactly how it is without looking at all of the comparison that happens out there, because it just takes me away from that. And my experience in the last year and a half is, I say to myself, I'm good at what I do, but my opportunity is to develop a bigger exposure, greater number of leads. And every way that I've hired other people to help me do that the way they do it, I don't want to say, I'm very cautious to avoid saying it's turned out nothing, because it has had some aspect in guiding me to these realizations and to other aspects. But for what I hired them to do, turned out with absolutely nothing. And so doing it the ways, comparing to how other people do it and doing it the ways they do it, was taking from me the very thing that I was developing the most. And it's like, how do I truly stand in my power, in my full expression? Because it is through my full expression that I create freedom in my life.
This journey of authenticity is a bitch, isn't it?
It is, man. It's the breaker of the programs of your ancestors. It's a breaker of the programs of your parents or whoever raised you in those first 7 years. And it's the breaker of the programs of society around you that's telling you or creating expectations on how you have to be.
Yeah. It's ultimately worth it, but our ego will go kicking and screaming and fighting till the bitter end to say otherwise. And so it's just a reminder of that. But I'm really curious, could you talk to me a bit about What's led you to this point in life where you are contemplating comparison? Where are you now? Where have you been? Tell me a bit about Greg.
Yeah. So that leads me, before I do that leads me to the second thing that I'm really pressing against in my life, or exploring in my life right now. And that has to do with the energy I'm in and the amount that I tell the story of the past. So I'm diving into the past with you.
Yeah.
But there's, for those people who are connected to Abraham Hicks and their teaching, and Esther Hicks and her channeling, a couple times this clip has come up recently for me where they are discussing that oftentimes people will attribute all of their wins and the things that are happening in their life and their breakthroughs to all the hard work and all the pain and all the suffering. And then we have these belief systems that it's that creates the outcome, when in fact they say it's when you changed your energy, like that you've already created, it's already there waiting to manifest, waiting to show up in your life. And it's when you changed your energy that allowed it to show up. You're just attributing it to something else. And I remember recently, in the not too distant past, I just had a hard day. Like none of the things I was working on were creating, and it's like tens of thousands of dollars. I gave myself a year. When we moved from Indiana to California, I'm like, we've got a year to make these things happen. We're completely building and changing things. We're putting ourselves in these positive pressure situations with money, and we've got a year to make this happen. And at a year and a half, I was like, what's happening, right?
Yeah.
But it's about a year. So sometime around April, I was just having a day of a little bit of deflation, and I'm really, really powerful at managing my emotional state and bringing myself back into alignment. But this day was rough, and it's been rough for my partner, Sarah, too, because simultaneously we're on very identical paths. And so between the two of us, it wasn't happening for either of us. And what are we going to do? And how are we going to make this happen? What are we going to do? And so for her, she's had some heavy times with it. And so when she sees me down, it's even heavier.
Yeah.
Right? So then I get in bed and I'm like, I just kind of throw my hands up and I'm like, maybe I just need to go get a job. Right. Which is to say, and I felt everything in me be like, you're going to give up on everything you're working for. Like, where are you? And in that moment, it snapped me out of it, but I was still, and I saw the defeat on her face when I say that, because for her to see me there it's really heavy. Yeah. And then I was like, I'm going to be okay. I just need to sleep. Tomorrow, it'll be a new day. And that next morning I got up and I started I have a list of daily habits, but I made an adjustment to one of my daily habits to where instead of journaling gratitudes or thinking about gratitudes, whatever, I'm going out to my garage. I get on the Rogue Attack bike. I'm not using the handles. I just start pedaling. I've been pedaling and I'm like, okay, I'm starting my day, 30 minutes, 9 miles. Pedaling, I close my eyes and it starts this practice of just gratitudes out loud. I'm grateful for this house. I'm grateful for my path. I'm grateful to be me. I'm grateful to have the heart to be my truth, and all these different things. It ends up I'm pedaling for 10 minutes just doing gratitudes out loud, and I'm feeling all this energy and these tingles through my body, and I just open myself to just start channeling myself, to channel whether, I don't know, whether we call it guides, whether we call it our higher self. I'm not sure. No, I just know that life speaks through me to me. I'm not the body and I'm not the brain. So if I'm not the body, I'm not the voice of the body. So when I get into this in-tune space, I'm just asking questions. I'm just listening to my voice. And my voice is saying, I'm asking, I'm saying all my gratitudes, and what do I need? Presence. Put down the phone. Get away from the distractions. Get rid of comparison. Like all these things start coming out of my mouth. And so this brings me to the point is, it was almost instantaneously. Something that day, momentum-wise, changed.
Wow.
I got a couple connections with somebody. Something happened. And that practice I've been elevating for the last number of months, and I've really been noticing the difference of when I stay in the present moment, in gratitude, in purpose, in expression, the difference of the momentum then. And when people, and I'm just really sensitive now when people ask me certain questions, and it's like, okay, that's going to dive back into the past, it's going to dive into the past, or I start by saying, well, I went through this hardship and all this difficulty, and I notice how that's telling those stories is not benefiting me as much as being present with my direction. So the two things I'm experiencing is comparison and the amount of time that I allow myself to be in the past. Wow. That said, I know with this purpose of this podcast and what we do dive into may be very relevant to dive into that past. So I allow myself to be in that space. So what brought me here? A lifetime of not feeling good enough, a lifetime of not being expressed, a lifetime of feeling like I wasn't seen, and a lifetime of all of those things happening from me to me. Wow. Because they're the patterns and programs of my ancestors, of my parents, of what I was shown. And there was years ago, a decade ago, I was getting ready to go through my second divorce. And my heart was so heavy because I know the love that I hold. I know the desire that I had to keep families together. I know that I have two boys who are now in split families. It's like, and I got on the computer, and it wasn't Google then, but I just searched. There's a lot of forums and chat rooms at the time. I don't know if those, I don't know if anybody even remembers forums or chat rooms, but I just searched for one for self-help, and I found this platform, this website that had chat rooms for under every topic you can think, from sexuality to aliens, to personal development, to religion. And I got in this room, and somebody had written something about going through all these hard times, and could anybody please suggest a book? And The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle came up. And it was the first time I didn't fully understand it then, but it was the first time where I felt a draw to something. It was the beginning of me honing into something popping up in my experience, like this Esther Hicks video. Now that I've seen it twice, I'm like, that is worth understanding and paying attention to. It keeps showing up in my reality. Am I listening? And so it was the first time that something showed up in my reality that made me say, oh, am I listening? Like, that's meant for me. I went out and got that book. It was either that day or the next morning, went to Barnes and Nobles, picked up the book, and it was the beginning. It was the beginning.
Wow.
Yeah.
That book was the beginning of my spiritual awakening as well. I imagine a lot of people had that book as an opener, because it's so accessible. It meets you in the unconscious very deeply with such a basic principle of presence.
Yeah.
And really, really powerful. We have a lot of things that you opened up that I want to ask some questions about. I'm really grateful for where we've opened this thing. And I want to start by talking about the stories that we tell ourselves that create our lives. And I love this topic right now. I have to do a shout out to Garrett J. White, who runs this thing called Wake Up Warrior. These concepts are not mine, and I would feel shame claiming them as my own. The backbone of his program is that when you ask the question, who am I? The only possible answer is, we are the stories we believe ourselves to be. And I love looking at that, because it's similar to this concept that you're talking about with Esther Hicks, where want to change your reality, change the story that you are telling about it. Yeah. That's another way, that's like a very practical, grounded way to say change the energetics of, like in the manifestation game, it's like, well, feel like the person that is the $1 million version of yourself. Feel like the person who's doing whatever the thing is that you're not doing presently. That's like the kind of manifestation 101. And I never really understood what that was. I'd like go into manifestation, try to visualize it and feel it. But a more grounded approach is to get honest with the story that you're actually telling yourself, and then rewrite that fucking story. And then look for evidence of the new story being true in your reality, and take one action towards that story. And when you do that, that story immediately becomes true because you just took action towards it. So you now have become the person that's embodied in that story.
Yes. A couple of things it's so powerful, that perception and practice. And a couple of things that come up for me is the brain doesn't know the difference. So I really focus on, in my coaching, neurology and physiology, patterns, programs, and habits. And the brain doesn't know the difference between what's real and what we're thinking about. It's just a computer in a dark room interpreting data. So when we sit on our back porch and the sun is setting and it's so beautiful, but we're going through the stressful argument we had at work, the brain is sending chemical signals and creating feelings in the body that mimic what we're thinking about. And we feel like we're in that fight until you pause and say, man, I am in front of this beautiful sunset. This is where I'm at. I can feel gratitude right now. I'm not in the fight, but as long as we're thinking about the fight, that's where we are. And this is one thing I say, and I don't know, when you release the podcast, are they released with video?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So everybody can see this if they're watching the video.
Yeah.
But just if not, I'm putting my hands up and I tell all my clients, I'm like, your energy creates your behaviors, and your behaviors create your results. So when I'm in this powerful energy, I'm coming in, my body language, the tone, the tempo, the volume of my voice, everything about how I talk, my inflection is showing you my passion. And so my energy is driving that behavior of the body, because I'm not thinking to myself now, get louder now, get softer now, stand up taller now. I am just focused on how I feel and my energy. And the body responds by creating behavior. And it's a really simple way to look at manifesting. Whatever energy I'm in manifests a physical behavior. And the results I get with you on this podcast would be different if I come in feeling grumpy and shitty, right? So your energy creates your behavior, which creates your results. Now, we're getting ready to have a conversation with a loved one, and imagine your energy's up, your hands are up. And the first thing you do is you think to yourself, oh, I know how this is going to go. Energy comes down a little bit. I'm going to say this. They're going to say this. I'm going to say this. They're going to say this. Now what's happening is that I'm presenting myself in the energy of what I expect to happen. And I can only behave up to the level of the energy that I'm in. So the story, as you're saying, full circle, the story I'm telling myself about the thing that isn't even fucking happening right now is affecting my energy, and it's going to change, and I'm actually going to create the results I expect.
Exactly.
Right? So what stories are we telling ourselves? Am I spending my time thinking about the heaviness of what I've just been through? Or am I spending my time thinking about, man, it feels so good to be fully expressed. It feels so good to be making my music. It feels so good to be connecting with people like you, to doing these podcasts, to be my full expression and step out of fear and just go hard with it. And know that energy is, I got tingles in my body thinking about it. It's that energy of my full presence, of my full being, of my full expression that is going to create results. I don't even know what they are yet. And I'm okay with that because it just feels good.
One of the things I took away from the book, The Power of Now, was that the past doesn't exist and the future doesn't exist. You can't ever go to these places. The only thing that exists is the forever infinite now moment. And so when we think of the concepts of heaven and hell, they do exist, but they can only exist in the present moment. That is the only place that heaven or hell can be. And when you're talking about, you can be on the front porch watching the most beautiful sunset, but also, what's the word I'm looking for? You're cycling your mind over a fight you just had with your loved one while this beautiful sunset's happening. You're in hell.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how beautiful the sunset is. And on the flip side, if you just stop, slow down, and experience gratitude for the moment, you've immediately shifted yourself into heaven. And the more we catch ourselves to do that, the more we are constantly living in the state of heaven. And it becomes the story we tell ourselves. Right now, I live in heaven. That I've lived in heaven for quite some time now. And it came through a practice of gratitude. And sometimes that gratitude was forced. Sometimes that self-love was forced. But I had to brute force my way into remembering how even the painful moments of life are a gift. If you had to choose between having the deep pain or nothing, on a deep level, I imagine you would choose the pain. And so the practice of gratitude gets us back into that expression.
Yeah, absolutely. We get to remember in that pain happens, but suffering is a choice.
Yes.
You know, how long do I stay in that? And I do say it's important to feel it, though. Like some people call it spiritual bypassing or whatever. I do ask myself, how fast can I get back into alignment after I feel it? I feel it, because it's pain is information. Anxiety, people who are trying to or believe that anxiety is a bad thing, anxiety practiced to the point of suffering is not a preferred thing. I can't call it good or good is a judgment just as bad as a judgment. So anxiety practiced to that point of suffering is not preferred. But anxiety in and of itself is healthy because it's information. And so the anxiety may hurt a little bit, may be painful, but you may be walking into a situation and your spidey senses tingle, right? You get just this, as anxiety happens and something then this beautiful, very intelligent body that we are in is saying, pay attention. There may be danger around, maybe something that doesn't work. And so if we don't pause to receive it all, so that then we can be grateful for it, because that anxiety may be the thing that saved us. That painful experience is the thing that saved us. For me, the biggest catalyst in my life has been either quote unquote failed or pretty excessively abusive relationships. Yep. You know, the worst one that I had before I was with my love, Sarah, right before I was with her, I had the opportunity to sit down with her and tell her, thank you, I love you, and I appreciate our relationship. It was a soul crusher, but it was everything I needed to change everything in my life to get on a new trajectory to who I really am. And so I was able to change my relationship from pain and suffering into appreciation and gratitude and say, man, that's the thing. I think Tony Robbins said it in his one special, I'm Not Your Guru, where he was talking about, if you're going to blame the people in the past for everything that went wrong, blame them for everything that went right too. Yeah. You know? So to find gratitude in that information and that pain versus suffering.
You know, going back to this idea of comparison, to me, comparison kills gratitude, because when I look at somebody else and compare myself to them, I'm immediately in lack mindset, which is counter to gratitude. If I'm in lack mindset, I am not as far as I should be compared to this person. I don't have enough. I don't have blah, 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 whatever the stories are. And so when we compare, the other thing that comes up for me around comparison, I heard this guy talking on a podcast one time about, you don't realize what that person went through to get to that point. Like, a lot of people want Elon Musk level money and success and fame, but they don't want the childhood abuse. They don't want the late nights on couches. They don't want the divorces and all of the bullshit that's happening in his life. They just want the good stuff.
Or the brain.
Well, it doesn't come that way.
The brain that never shuts up, right? He says how painful it is to be him.
Yeah. So when people compare, they also often are comparing to the fantasy of the person. you know? It's like, are you comparing to the true reality, or are you just comparing to the results that they have, thinking that you can have those results without the pain that it took for them to get there? And so then is it even real? Like when you look at somebody else, like there's nothing real about a comparison.
Or even you want their results, but some of the people that have the results you're looking for are in a pain and despair deeper than you could even carry, right? So
For sure.
So yeah, you don't get one without you can't just, comparison often cherry picks.
It's a lie. At the end of the day, comparison's a lie. That's all that it fucking is.
I want to mention something you noted. You said comparison is a lack mindset. And you said, I'm not as far as I should be. And I want to bring this attention to people. Language matters. Should and need imply lack. So I would challenge everyone, pay attention to how often you say I should or I need. So should and need imply lack. So let's say somebody says, oh, I should work out. I should really be working out. I'll say, no, you shouldn't. You can or you cannot. It's a choice.
Yeah.
The reason it's lack is because you feel you should, is because you look in the mirror and you are lacking in your confidence, and you look and you see how you look physically, and you're using it as a method of saying, oh, I'm lacking in my confidence, I should work out. Or you go to the doctor and you feel you're lacking in physical health, and the doctor says, well, your numbers are really bad and you need to be working out. You don't need to, but if you choose to be healthy, you must. Now, can you? So I always say, should and need imply lack. Be very well aware of when you're using should and need, and can you reframe that to say, man, I should be working out. I can work out. It's a choice. Am I ready to work out? Because I would challenge that anytime we should or need something, we won't. It's not until we drop that. It's not until we drop the should need and we just say, I fucking can. And I am. And it's a choice, and it's not from anything other than me. And therein probably drops some level of comparison because we're just focusing on how we want to feel. And I've went through this whole thing about working out. A lot of things. I'm just recently really getting after it at a higher level than I have in a long, long time, and it feels amazing. I was away from it for so long that I wasn't comparing to anybody. I was just looking at myself and being like, bro, this is not representative of the best version of you. And what's the best version of you in every aspect, mind, body, and spirituality? Like, where am I at with my body? I can do better than this. And I recognized that I forgot what it was like to push hard, to sweat, to feel the pain, to step into it and to love it. And man, am I on fire now. But it's all internal. It does help build that confidence, when you go and push, because you're taking action towards becoming that better version of yourself. And what is, I write this down, what is confidence to you? I'll tell you what it means to me, and then you tell me what it means to you. Confidence is your full authentic expression. Because there is no other you on this planet. There's no other you. So somebody's, nobody has to be you. You don't need to be you. But your authenticity is a unique perspective that is a singular part of the whole. And we need you to be you. And so to me, since there's nobody else can be you, there is no competition, and therefore there is no comparison.
Yeah.
So to me, confidence is being in your full expression.
I don't know that I could say it in a better way. What came to me was the ability to live your truth despite any external validation, essentially. Like your validation or your why for what you do only comes from inside. And to me, confidence is something that's earned by doing. It's not something that you just are born with, because oftentimes, like, you can have, I would consider someone who just goes and does something that they don't have experience with. There's a bit of like, I don't know, naivete. Like, I'll give an example. I went and did a backwoods camping adventure by myself in Yosemite one year, packed everything I needed to pack, went out, and it was like early April and the snow had just thawed. And like during the day it was 80 degrees or 75 degrees, but then at night it would drop down to around 30. And so I had all of this gear. I'm going through, and before you go off into the backcountry, you have to check in with the rangers and let them know where you're going. And I told him where I was going, and he's like, you're going to be the only human being there for like, period. Like within 22 miles of you, there will be nobody. And he was like, and bears are just coming out of hibernation. He's like, so you need to make sure that your food is really far away from you when you bed down at night. He's like, because they're going to be looking. So I get to my spot where I'm going to post up for the night, and I did a hammock that night, which was super dumb because the temperature dropped down to 30. And even though I had a heavy coat, the air was just blowing right underneath me. So I'm super cold. And I had taken my bear can and just put it like, I don't know, 100 feet down the trail, but it was just along the trail after I'd eaten. So I'm sitting in a hammock, freezing cold, and in the middle of the night I hear crunch, 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 and it is a loud, heavy crunch and the deep breathing of a very big animal. And my hammock is only about 3 feet off the ground too, so I'm just right at eye level, a nice bear burrito waiting to be sniffed and explored, and I'm the only human being for 22 miles. Terrifying, absolutely fucking terrifying experience for me. I went into that camping trip super confident, but was it confidence or was it naivete? I think confidence is what came after if I go back and do it again after I had the challenge that I experienced with that. I thankfully did not get eaten. The bear continued on down the trail and did his thing, but I didn't sleep hardly at all that night. And the fear of it was so strong that it was challenging for me to get back out and camping again on my own. So then the question is, did I really, like I said, did I really have confidence at that point, or did I have naivete? I think confidence comes from experience of hardship within the field that you're in and keep going after that hardship, you know? Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, from that experience, did I learn? And then did I go again and build up more knowledge and keep going? That's where true confidence lies, if you ask me. And that happens often in business and even in the spiritual game. I hear people, I talk about this on the podcast all the time. It's not meant to be, not meant to be. That to me is a lack of confidence, actually, because everything is meant to be if you choose it. Whatever you choose is meant to be. That's the point. And it's, if you're only choosing things based on if they're easy or if they come without any hardship, are you really actually choosing the thing, or are you allowing your lack of confidence to drive your decisions that you make in life?
Yeah, I'm writing down, there's so many things in what you just said. And I think there's a distinction that can be made in confidence, and there is confidence in being and confidence in doing.
Yes.
So in this case, the confidence I'm talking about is the confidence in being, which is what allows me to release comparison and judgment, release and have freedom from expectation of others. Versus when you bring in naivety, that's in the doing. That's in the navigating of life's things, to realize that, oh, you went into that completely naive, unprepared, and with a confidence that arguably could have been your undoing.
Yeah. But that's where confidence of being is only bolstered by confidence of doing. That's true. Like the rubber hits the road. Yeah. Like, you can be all you want until you actually act on it. It's like, I'm not impressed by somebody that sits there with a great mindset and then doesn't take any fucking action
Yeah.
from it.
Well, so, and then, but in that also, in following the confidence of that you had, even though it had some naivety to it, you experienced a path that generated something much, much deeper. So who's to say that you should have done that any other way than what you did? This is the perfect I always say every choice is the right choice, because every choice has the opportunity to show you where you are.
Yeah.
Right. The other thing you said, the people who are choosing the easy versus the hard, is choosing the comfort versus the uncomfortable, are slaves to their programs and patterns, right? Because there's one thing I love to do is take these cliche, overplayed out statements and kind of break them down a little easier. But the people who say, you know, everybody's heard, get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that really mean? Well, the brain and body are built to survive. The brain and body are always trying to keep you in the familiar known, because the known and the familiar is the safety, and safety equals survival. The unknown, the brain is just a computer in a dark room. It doesn't know that the unknown is literally harmless. You know, I'm going to go start doing this new practice of meditation and breath work or yoga. You know, really hard to find danger in that, right? But the brain just says, oh, that's unknown. That's going to create change. Unknown is danger. It's the potential for death. Don't go there. And so there's the uncomfortable. Every time we make a decision to do something different, to be something different, to behave in a new way, we're probably going to feel uncomfortable, because the brain and body don't want you. The paradox is the brain and body are going to work to keep you the same. So if you've been dealing with feelings of deep anxiety or depression for the last 2 years, your heart, your soul may be saying, I'm ready for change. I'm ready for change. And you wake up in the morning and your brain just says, we're alive. So whatever we did yesterday, rinse and repeat.
Yep.
And so your brain sends you a thought that you think is you thinking, and it's not you thinking. Your brain is just sending a thought that says, oh man, today sucks. Oh, I don't know about this. I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't go do that. Maybe we should do this instead. And the thoughts are all patterned programs that keep us the same. The power of the paradox is that for that brain and body that are trying to keep us the same, we actually have command over them. And when we can be uncomfortable enough to command them to do these different things, and we can stay consistent long enough, then those different things become our current new way of being. And now the brain and body try to keep you there. So as we go from the easy into the hard, as we're choosing the hard and we're choosing to stick with it, we become good at what we practice, just like walking. And the more we practice it, the more it becomes what the brain and body identify as the me or the self or the ego or the identity to me. And now it says, cool, let's be this. So now there was a time when the version of Greg Kruger didn't meditate. He didn't take ownership. He had zero presence, and he had zero daily success habits, and he had a very high thought process of who he was. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and now there's this version that wakes up in the morning, is so excited to get on the bike, to get my body moving, to get myself connected, to get into gratitude, to purposefully choose my energy, and to step into the uncomfortable ways of being my truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love how you put all of that. I think the other part of this game is getting really clear about all of the different facets of who you are, like your beingness. So for example, you got the body, you've got the spirituality, you've got the relationships, you've got the health, you've got the money, career, business, those types of things. We can create new habits, but if we're not doing them holistically, there's still a strong chance of failure at them. So I'll give an example. I used to work out like a madman every morning, but I was not prioritizing relationships or my health in ways that were supporting me beyond just me working out all the time. And so inevitably that practice became a negative thing for me. I ended up injuring myself and not being able to work out, and ultimately stopping working out to then have to try to rebuild that pattern back again in my life. And now for the past year and a half, I've been approaching that with making sure that I'm attacking every facet of my life with the same ferocity, so that they all balance each other. When I go after my body in a holistic way, I go after my relationships in a holistic way. So many people do not realize the significance of having sturdy relationships, truly close friends, truly ingrained community. It's actually, at this point, you can work on your body all fucking day long. Not having a close friend, isolation, leads to a 33% increased risk of all-cause mortality across your entire life. It's actually a higher indicator of all-cause mortality than sleep. Isolation is. And so you can work out all fucking day long. You can get the best sleep. You can be making money. But if you're isolated, you're still dying. You're still dying inside. And so it doesn't matter. And so there's a facet of looking at these approaches of creating new patterns, new habits in our lives that have to take into account the whole human. And then it's about taking sustainable baby steps, because if you are going to try to become David Goggins on day one, you're going to fail. And if you go try to be, who's somebody with a lot of friends? I might be aging myself strongly here, but Tom from MySpace, he had millions of friends, so right? Friends, but you know what I mean? It's like, go ahead. I see you, you have some thoughts here on
my question to you is, when you were in go mode, but not in balance, because you said balance is huge. Yeah. I just wrote that down as something to touch base on. But my question is, what was your purpose? What was your why for working out?
Ultimately, it came down to...
Who were you working out for?
Yeah. Ultimately, it came down to my view of success, which was, at the time, if I could get a hot enough girlfriend and if I was making enough money. So
that's what I figured you might say, because it was for the external world in which you were behaving, correct? So 100%. Purpose matters. When I went through, and I had a similar thing when I went through the last abusive relationship of my life that I will ever be in, and I'd been in the gym for 21 years, I worked out hard to play hard, so I thought. And I fell out for years. I was just in and out, inconsistent enough that I kept my build to some degree, but just inconsistent. And I couldn't figure it out. It was something that was so important to me, 4 to 6 times a week, just part of my life. And I couldn't figure out why I was having such a hard time. And then I realized, well, here, let me just express something I realized in the relationship. I'll come back to the relationship. Well, I think I have to tell you first. When I went through the last abusive relationship, I sat there, and I am this 230-pound man who had a black eye from his girl, who blamed it on a toolbox coming off the shelf and hit me in the face. I am this guy who was getting cheated on. I am this guy who was being told daily what a fake, fraud, and phony I was, and it just turned into this mentally, emotionally, physically abusive relationship. And I asked myself, because I was 5 years into coaching, and I quit coaching, I quit meditating. I mean, I was gaslit down to not knowing who I was, questioning myself. Am I even who I think I am? Or is it possible that I think I'm somebody that nobody else sees? And I was like, if like attracts like, if what I'm putting out is creating my reality, how am I doing that? How am I taking all of this abuse when I'm what felt like I was on the most trustworthy, loyal, trajectory of becoming and coaching and all these different things. And I recognized, there's this filter. We either create and know our self-worth internally, or we let the external world dictate it for us. Okay. And this can change context to context. So you may be super confident at the work you do. Inherently, and nobody's going to change that. And in your relationship with your friends, but you get into that relationship with your dad and you're like trying to prove yourself.
Yeah.
Now you're external. Yeah. So the context can change. We aren't the same in every context necessarily. So I recognized in the context of intimate relationships, I was external. I was insecure. I didn't value myself. So I was spending so much time helping my partners, AKA the external world, to start their own business, to live their dreams. And I wasn't focusing on myself, and I would do. I was the dad who was taking care of his kids and your kids while you're at work, and I cook and I clean and look at everything that I do so that you think I'm amazing.
Yeah.
And so what I recognized was that was why I kept having the same patterns, because I was external, and that I would serve the external world, AKA my partner, in order to feel validated. And I was attracting someone who is external. The difference was that she needed the external world to serve her to feel validated. Neither of us felt whole. I was doing for her to tell me I was great. She was needing me to do for her to feel great, right? And so enter the giver and the taker. Most times the giver, like this guy was, thinks they're in the right, and then they become a victim. So that giver generally has a victim pattern happening as well. But the fact of the matter is the giver and the taker are operating at the same insecure energy levels. Now, where am I going with this for the working out? I couldn't figure out why I couldn't get back in the gym. And this is why I asked you, what was your purpose of working out? And then it dawned on me. I couldn't get back in the gym because the only time I was ever in the gym was so that I looked good for women, so that I was doing all the actions for the purpose of the external world to tell me I was hot or tell me I had a great body or whatever that was. And I had to just reinvent. I dove into endurance sports for a while, stuff where I didn't look as good, but I was like, I want to move. I know it makes me feel better, but I'm going to do something different. And so I did. And so even this last year and a half has been so many different things for me. And I've had different injuries and things that have set me back. 2 years ago, I had this inguinal hernia. I was out for 7 months of movement. And so over the course of the last couple of years has been all these things. And then I got in the mirror and I'm like, I don't like the way I look for me.
Yeah.
I'm starting to exercise and I can tell I've got 30 extra pounds and I feel it. And now my purpose is my purpose is, what is the best version? When I think of what's the best version of Greg Kruger, it's this fucking giant. And the giant is mental, emotional, and physical, and driven for myself. And now I'm eating it up. Now I'm back. I just did my first 1,000-meter swim. I haven't done one of those for a couple years, and just in all aspects of the training and putting weights in it and just holding myself to a higher standard. Now my purpose is the best version of me versus trying to serve the external world.
Yeah. So I love where we're going with this, and I want to take a detour that will lead us right back to here. Yeah. And that is to discuss this concept it's called From Zero to One in relationship to comparison. So I love this book by Peter Thiel called 0 to 1. And the really Cliff Notes synopsis of this thing is that to go from 0 to 1 customer in your business that came in through your marketing, that came in who you don't know, and they most likely don't know you, but they bought your product, that is the most important milestone that a business can focus on, because it shows that your product is truly valuable and it's not just friends and family buying it from you. And the amount of work it takes to go from 0 to 1 is equivalent to the amount of work as it takes to go from 1 to 10, is equivalent to the amount of work as it takes to go from 10 to 100 and 100 to 1,000 paying customers. And so he said the enemy of startups is that they focus on going from 0 to 1,000. And if they just focused on going from 0 to 1, they will make it to 1,000 by knocking over each one of those milestones. And so to bring this full tilt back to comparison, it's the fucking enemy of that idea. And it kills people's dreams and their motivation to do anything right out the gate, because when you look at somebody of where you aspire to be, well, of course, the work from going from 0 to 1,000 is damn near impossible where you're at. But the work from going from 0 to 1 is extremely manageable. And so I'm celebrating this milestone. I just had that milestone in my business brothership, where I had a man come in who I had no idea who this guy is, and he joined the calls, having a great time. I fucking love having him there. I'm excited to be friends with him, and it was cool. He's my 0 to 1. The amount of effort it took to go from 0 to 1, it's so manageable for me to do 1 to 10. I know it. It's giving me the confidence. So we're tying this all back in. It's giving me the confidence to take that step. And as I go from 1 to 10, I know the amount of work that's going to take to do that, to go from 10 to 100, is equivalent. And so it's going to keep building that confidence to go. The same applies to the gym. The same applies to relationships. The same applies to spirituality. If we can just allow ourselves to go from 0 to 1 by not comparing to anybody external, just comparing ourselves to who we were yesterday and taking one aligned action towards that next version of yourself, you're going to get there way faster than you actually think. It's when you compare, it fucking kills all of the momentum. It sets everything back. It's not authentic. And it is really just an act of self deprecation, self punishment, because it gets back to that should or that need. It gets back to that well, you piece of shit, you're not there, you can't get there, you blah blah blah, the work's too hard, you're gonna, all of these kinds of things.
There's also the comparison of the time frame it takes, right?
For sure.
My first coach, Dustin, rest in peace, brother. He would have me make lists of, for instance, my perfect partner. Give me the description of your perfect partner. Describe the dynamics of your perfect partner, of your perfect relationship. And then was the big part. Release judgment for how and when she arrives. And it wasn't until I went single for 5 years after that last relationship before I met Sarah, in my wholeness, that I really realized that, because I finally was to the point where I don't care if I'm single. I don't care if I'm dating. And I realized that if I was 85 years old when I met the love of my life, the previous 85 years would have zero matter, because I would just be so excited and so present. So can we just release judgment? Can we just stay in our energy again, it's the releasing of comparison. But that 0 to 1, man, it's really powerful, because I can see how that would be hard to land with some people. The beauty in the 1, which I think is probably the most important one, just the first one, is the most important one, because even though we have this internal confidence, there is some level, there is validation feels fucking good.
Yeah.
And when you're just being yourself and you get that 1, you're like, wow, somebody sees me. But
you're no longer an imposter.
Yeah, and
you are legit.
But I would challenge too that 1 will come when you see yourself. So I always challenge people. I'm like, if there's something that you're wishing for from the outside world, I just want to be seen. I just want to be heard. I just want somebody to receive me. Then I would say, do you see yourself? Do you receive yourself? Are you hearing yourself? Do you speak to yourself? Are you standing in front of the mirror? Are you looking into your own eyes saying, I love you and I'm proud of you. I believe in you. Yeah. Are you standing and being everything for you internally that you wish the outside world would do? And it's okay to feel great in that validation. That's a beautiful thing. As long as that the results are coming from you acting in your truth. Because you can get results not acting in your truth. Something not fun is going to happen sometime regarding that.
So one of the points I want to bring us really far back to is this connecting to the voice inside ourselves. Mm-hmm. You were speaking about how when you were on that the bike and you were going, all of a sudden this energy came through and you started talking yourself out loud and the answers started coming. And to me, that is the guiding light towards stepping into purpose. That voice is going to, like, if you're sitting here right now going, okay, beautiful, love all this, but I don't know where the fuck to go. Connecting with that voice is the thing that's going to guide you where to go. It's the thing that's going to tell you to do this action in the unknown that you wouldn't normally do. That's going to break the pattern. That's going to break the cycle. And I'm really curious to just hear your perspective on this voice, how you connect with it, what the value it's brought to your life, and how others can connect to it within themselves.
So your voice is, I think the biggest way we become our truth is by making the unconscious conscious. Okay. We're good at what we practice. The brain and body is just this biological robot. It's running on patterns, programs, and habits. We're good at what we practice, and what we practice becomes invisible. When we first tried to stand, we couldn't balance. When we first were born, we didn't even know how to use our hands, and babies cut their faces with their fingernails all the time, not even realizing how to use their hands. But the more you practice walking and using your hands, the less actual conscious thought it takes to do those things. So we're good at what we practice. What we practice becomes invisible. From walking and making your coffee to anxiety and depression, right? Mm-hmm. The body and brain become so good at things that they doesn't need your conscious awareness to do it. A pro basketball player is not consciously running through balance and follow through and all these things. They've done it so many times that if they actually consciously try to think about it, they're going to hinder the quality at which their body and brain has practiced doing it. So when we start to, the thing about making the unconscious conscious is it's become invisible. It's become a blind spot. Well, how do we see those blind spots? Right? How are those revealed? Well, awareness. And awareness in watching, I would often say that the I is the unique individual consciousness or expression in the soul. And if you take the I out of the body and brain and become a witness and aware of you can watch it, how it responds. How do I respond to a person cutting me off in traffic? What is my response to that tone of voice? What is my response to a door slamming? How does the body respond? And it shows you practice behaviors. Now, it's important to note, we can get into this if we want to, that the body is the library of your ancestors. You're actually born into this pre-programmed body that is built for survival, and it's built for survival. In order to survive, you have to have the information of how your ancestors survived in the environment in which you're getting born into. And the environment you're being born into is not just your external environment, but your internal emotional environment. So anger was something I've dealt with in my life, and I came to realize it was never mine. I looked up my family tree and I see the anger that exists all the way up this men's side of life in our lineage. But it was so invisible to me that it wasn't until I had this massive moment of awareness where my one son is 10 years old and I'm screaming in his face, and it's like I pop out of my body and I can see how ugly, it makes me sad. I can see how ugly the anger was that I was expressing, and I could see how scared he was.
Yeah.
And how that felt. And it was that moment, that awareness that said, hey, dude, you are the anger that you've tried to escape your whole life. It's in you. It's in the body. How are you going to manage that? So it's awareness that brings it present. Where I'm coming from with the voice, though, is this. We got to find those blind spots. How do we find the blind spots? Listen to your fucking voice. When somebody's telling you something and you give them advice, ask yourself, was that meant for me or for them? If there's some topic that you're really hung up and preaching about right now, are you preaching about it because you've been through this experience and you want to share this? Or is there something trying to be shown to you, right? Because if you're not in the body, the voice belongs to the body. So I tell my clients that my higher self speaks through me to me. When I'm coaching people, it's so synchronistic how the things they're going through are either reinforcing to me things that I've overcome and saying, good job, you're on the right path, or they're showing me, dude, like, I might be telling them, hey, do these daily success habits. And I recognize through awareness, I'm not doing the daily success habits, but my voice is telling them do the daily success habits, but my voice is telling me do your daily fucking success habits, bro. So
yeah.
I was last year in my first journey with grandmother medicine with ayahuasca, and I don't want to share the whole experience, but I will just say this for now, is that I was in a space of both awareness and experience, where I was aware that my mind was losing it. Overwhelmed, so much information, so much data, so much geometric shape, so much. And simultaneously, while I'm aware of and feeling my mind lose it, I'm aware of and feeling my body just trembling and shaking, which people say is the release of ancestral trauma. So I'm aware of and witnessing both of those things happening. And at the exact same time, I'm witnessing my voice, and it's saying, just breathe, just feel. You got this. Just breathe, just feel. So I'm literally losing my shit, and my voice is whispering at the exact same time, and it's guiding me. And I'm aware of my voice, and it's everything to me, and it's calm and it's comforting. And I'm also aware that I'm not consciously speaking it. And I go through this whole experience. I guess I'll get into it. What the experience ultimately was suddenly my voice said, it's too much, I need help. It's too much, I need help. And in that moment, my love, Sarah, was beside me, and she just grabbed my hand, and she was there.
Wow.
And I recognized that I had this program and pattern of never asking for help. And in that split second, I watched myself get to the point. I realized that in order for me to break the pattern of never asking for help, it required me carrying a load so intense that I thought I was going to lose my mind. And I was so grateful to the medicine to allowing me to experience that in that safe space, because for me to hit that level of pain, craziness, everything, whatever it was I was experiencing in the real world, I would have had to lose everything. So that medicine provided me the opportunity to explore that so deeply in that moment, to break that. But the biggest thing was I was listening, my voice guided me. And I just created an even deeper relationship with that voice. And where does it come from? And it was the whispers, right? It was just the whispers. And I think it's important to note there's a couple different voices in my head, as lunatic as that may sound, right? I'm super schizo, but years ago, I just noticed, and I asked myself, what are these different voices?
Yeah.
And that loud one is the ego, for me. But it was this guy that just whispered, the subtle voice. And so when I could tune in, and when I could trust, and so where does this voice show me my blind spots and how do I tap into it? It's first being in alignment, getting into a space of gratitude, loving myself for who I am, loving myself for the way I express myself, saying and asking for, I ask for what you need, ask for protection as I open myself up just to receive myself. And then I just start asking questions. What do I need in this moment? And just listen or speak it.
Yeah.
You know? And so I used to do what I call channeled writing, where I would just write in my journal and I would write the question and I would just start writing an answer. Let me see what flows out. And I would sometimes be like, dude, are you making this up? I'm like, it doesn't matter. I'm writing a question. I'm writing an answer. Let's just see what it is. And then it evolved to, let me ask the question and receive it in my mind. Let me ask the question out loud and actually just start speaking an answer. And let me just witness what it is.
Yeah.
And so to me, that voice represents, from a place of alignment, now I know it's my authentic voice. I would not, from a place of anger, ask myself those questions because the voice is only going to be tuned into that energy of anger. So I got off possibly on a long tangent. I think I might have brought it back around to the original aspect of the voice, but
I love where we've gone.
It shows me, it's just my way to communicate to myself. And so I would encourage, I had a mentor, Nova, she would always talk about guides and what her guides tell her and I just always was like, man, I want to feel all that mystical shit, man. I want to see beings and be guided. And what is all this that other people talk about? But my version of how I connect was, she told me, she said, start talking out loud. start talking out loud to them. If you want guidance, speak out loud. And it took me a while to fully do that to the level that I embody it now. But man, it's so fucking powerful for me every day.
Yeah. When you were talking, I found myself getting very emotional because I've had that voice come through in my own life many times. And it's really when I've needed it the most. And in those moments, that voice really has even saved my life before. And at the time, I had chalked it up to just me self-soothing or going crazy or just talking my way out of something. And in reality, there's a deeper knowing that it was the higher aspect of myself. Like even an experience I shared on my first episode of the podcast was my attempted suicide. And one of the things that the voice had me do was call my mom, who I was estranged from at the time. And that phone call 100% saved my life. And not only did it save my life, it rebuilt my relationship with my family. And it has set me on a path of healing that I wouldn't trade for anything in the fucking world. And that voice has come in many times during my healing journey, even when things happen. You spoke about your body vibrating on ayahuasca. I've had that happen so many times over the past 3 or 4 years. I even talked about this on the most recent podcast I just filmed. And when that comes up in my body, oftentimes it's the most scary shit. Like my heart rate is elevated to a point where I'm like, oh my God, am I going to die? My breathing is just, and like the body just starts to, and it like, I've learned to not try to control that when it happens, to actually relax into it and say, I'm safe, I'm okay. And what's so beautiful is the voice will come through and it's like, you're okay, you're safe, you got this. And I'll even start to hold myself, you got this, it's okay, just breathe. And it's clearly not my ego talking, because my ego's screaming in my head, you're going to fucking die. You're going to fucking die if you don't go to the hospital right now. You don't call somebody, you don't wake, and so like, but there's also this voice that's like, you're okay. You got this. You got this. You got this. It's all perfect. You're upgrading. You're relax into it. Let it be fun. Enjoy it. Your body's releasing something it's been holding on to for a very long time.
Yeah.
I've had those come up many times. I think I would venture to say I've had 15 of them at this point in the past 4 years. And hearing your expression of like, it's ancestral stuff that's being released, full yes in my system. Like, that's exactly what's happening. And like, I've heard it called a trauma release. And inevitably it comes after some major, it comes back to confidence. I've done something that has significantly improved my confidence in myself. So for example, when I launched this podcast, I shared within the first 5 episodes, I shared some of the most vulnerable shit I have ever had, like my most vulnerable material, stuff I was hiding from the whole world.
Yeah, we've talked
for
about
my whole
that.
life. Yeah, I shared it. Well, of course, one of these came up. Of course it did, because it was I had finally let this stuff go into the world, so my body didn't need to hold it anymore.
Yes.
And so then it let it go. So I woke up in the middle of the night, scared the shit out of Taylor, my fiance, because I was just like about to vibrate off the fucking bed. And I had been through a number of these before, but even like my teeth were chattering and everything. And I leaned into it. I was just like, okay, thank you, God. Yes. If I die, what a blessing. I've served. I got it out. I put it out there. And if I don't, beautiful. I can't wait for my body to move through this. And just breathe. Just breathe. Yeah. Let it go. Let it happen. And for me, it lasts anywhere between 20 minutes to 45 minutes. And those 45 minutes feel like an eternity, but it is, every time I lean in on this, it gets easier and easier, and it's a blessing.
Dude, that grandmother experience I had was like 3 to 4 hours. It was the most, but it was beautiful because I also had my partner witnessing. She was there and witnessed, and she was in a beautiful way. And just, I also had set an intention to give me everything I'm ready to receive. And boy,
what a beastly intention for Aya. That's first grandmother goes, okay, honey.
I don't know what I'm ready to let go, but I do want to. One thing I love doing, like I said, I think I said this, was I love taking the things that feel woo woo and don't land with people and repackaging them. And so, in the discussion, it made me think of that. If anybody listening doesn't receive or know how to land with ancestral trauma and releasing from the body, I want to go back to the aspect of how the body is created. And so the body is created, it's just, I said it's the library of your ancestors. And then you got the brain. It's also just a record of the past, but it's a record of past of your experience in this life. And then you take that data in your brain and you take that data in your body, you package it up and you shove it in your kids, right? We just duplicate. So your body is built to survive. So it has to have information internally and externally on how to survive the internal, external environment. So no one would argue that people look like their ancestors. So there's data being passed on that creates you to look the same, to have the same build, all these things that allowed your ancestors, the brain and body just says, that's what it took for us to survive. You will survive. It's, whether you call it evolution or whatever. And so when you look at the gifts you have, your intelligence, your good looks, your build, or your athleticism, sorry, not yours. Probably from your ancestors. Now, they can be yours because you've worked on them, honed them, and got them better, right? You get to own what you work on, but some of these aspects, you just didn't do anything. They're just in the body you're in. But so is the trauma, the anxiety, the anger for me, the victimhood and resentment, so many different programs that were given to me that I didn't even recognize. The victimhood was just 2 years ago that I started realizing, when I was asking out loud, I'm like, there's something limiting here. What is it? And it was only through one of my sons where he was complaining about something. And then I said, dude, stop being a victim. And I was like, voice speaks through me to me. Like that, I had been asking for that. So, it showed me, I'm like, oh, what is victimhood to me? How am I being a victim? But that's a whole nother topic. But the point of the ancestral release is that we have information in our body that does not serve us. That was something that our ancestors had. And when we talk about saving or healing ancestors, we're also talking about the people to come behind us.
Yep. Future
because my
ancestors.
sons were born in a time when I wasn't yet healed. So I passed that on. So the best I can do now is break my own chains of those programs, change out the victimhood, change out the anger, call in the acceptance, call in the peace and calm, and lead by example in the hopes that my boys both can heal those wounds if they exist within them, before they duplicate and send it on to the next generation. So healing ancestors isn't some woo-woo thing that's just about when we're talking about ancestors of the past. It's the programming of our ancestors in our physical body. And this goes again to the point when I said you got to feel it. Like when you went through that release and when I went through my experience, I felt it. I recognized it. I saw it. I understood, and I let go. And you, in this case, in order to do that, required you expressing that, because you had held it so in because of the fear that it was. And now when you let it out, the body releases, and it changes. It changes for your ancestors. It changes for everybody to follow, and maybe some from the past because they leading by example. So
So I want to bring the listener home on this concept, and I want to open up the door briefly on something that I know we'll both be passionate about here. A very quick, effective, cheap, free, not have to go do psychedelics way to tap into this for yourself, release it, to experience it, and also to break out a comparison and a bunch of other bullshit in your life, is the most available tool that we have in the entire planet. Which, Greg, I imagine you know exactly where I'm going with this.
Breath, baby. Let's do breath.
Yes. Let's talk about that for a moment.
Yeah, I'm a certified breathwork instructor as well. And, arguably, you die if you don't eat, you die if you don't hydrate. I guess it is arguable because there are people who apparently don't eat and drink and have been medically tested doing these things, right?
Yeah.
But arguably, again, 3 weeks not eating, you're going to die. A few days without water, you're going to die. But a few minutes without breathing and you're going to die. So you could say, well, breathing is the most important aspect to life. But the breath commands the nervous system. And I always say, if you want to get into the operating system, which is the brain, you've got to have command over the nervous system. And breathing is I believe the only autonomic function or automatic function of the body which we can actually take command over. So we can breathe. I teach breathing for 3 purposes. 1, for present moment awareness. Breathe to drop in, become aligned in the present moment. Because if you want to hear, where does that voice come from? Presence. Shut down everything else, close your eyes, turn off all the data that's coming in from your eyes to your brain, breathe, connect with the feelings in your body, find yourself present. So we breathe for presence and awareness. We breathe for health and longevity. How we breathe nasally changes our levels of stress and believe it or not, people believe CO2 is a waste product. CO2 actually causes vasodilation. It causes expansion. It causes relaxation in the body. Oxygen and over-breathing causes vasoconstriction. So too much air actually causes cardiovascular issues and hypertension.
Is that why mouth tape at night helps people sleep better? Because it's making you nose breathe?
Right. So let's talk about what we really want to do with breathing. There's no medical book that's ever going to say that a function of the mouth is to breathe. Breathing is a function of the nose. When we breathe in our nose, we restrict the amount of air that can be entered into our body. And it cleans it, of course. When we breathe in our nose, it creates nitric oxide, which is a vasodilator, expansion, relaxation. When we breathe out our nose, it restricts the amount of CO2 that we push out. So a word I wrote down earlier that you mentioned was balance. So when it comes to breath work, it's about balance of oxygen and carbon dioxide. So for health and longevity, not only can we use breath work for athletic performance, but we use it for stress reduction, which is huge for longevity, right? So there's different breathing techniques that we can use. And a very simple one is if we need to calm down, we make our exhale twice as long as our inhale. And just consistently, I would challenge people, breathe all the way from your inhale all the way till you start exhaling and exhale. And if you can do it all through your nose, that's the best. Right?
Interesting.
So
yeah, not through the mouth on the exhale.
Yeah, and there's thousands of ways to breathe in different ways. There are times I exhale through my mouth, but it's usually when I'm building up for an exhaled breath hold, which is for training oxygen efficiency and carbon dioxide toleration. That's a whole nother thing. But when we talk about what I'm leading to here is the psychedelic experience. And so we breathe for presence and awareness. We breathe number 2 for health and longevity, and we can train that because here's the key thing for health and longevity. We're good at what we practice, and what we practice becomes invisible. So if you can practice powerful, correct nasal breathing habits every single day, pretty soon, just like walking, your body's going to be breathing efficiently for you without your thinking about it in the healthiest possible way. We're training our body. So breath work, breath training, call it what you want. The third reason I use breath work is for transformational work. Transformational breath, some people call it trauma release, some people call it rebirthing. There's holotropic breathing. It's all pretty much the same, a little bit difference in techniques, but it's all mouth breathing. So what's happening? When we mouth breathe, and so this goes back to taping your mouth, this is very important for speakers to pause sometimes and breathe through their nose, because when we mouth breathe, we're hyperventilating. When people are hyperventilating, what do? They put a sack over their face so that they breathe back in their carbon dioxide.
Wow.
Because here's what's happening when we mouth breathe. When we mouth breathe, we're over breathing. So our oxygen levels, we're taking in more oxygen than we need. Right? And taking in more doesn't mean we're absorbing more in our blood, FYI. But just for simplistic sake, our oxygen levels, we're over breathing. That's high. We're breathing out of our mouth, so our CO2 levels are dropping because we're getting rid of more CO2. We're creating this massive imbalance between oxygen and carbon dioxide. Okay? The brain utilizes carbon dioxide as the measure for breathing. So when CO2 levels rise, it triggers the brain to breathe. Okay. So it's not our breathing, but it's the level of CO2 in our system that is triggering our brain to change the way we're breathing. When we have these experiences of mouth breathing for transformational purposes and we're putting this balance way off, my understanding is the brain thinks it's dying. And in that experience, because it's such an imbalance of oxygen and CO2, right, that you start to have thoughts, visions, however it is that you receive. I have been in a full-blown transformational breathwork before as a participant, and ugly cried like 4 times. When I say ugly cried, I mean I was sobbing, making noises, just a mess. I also was screaming out, "I get to win!" Woohoo!
Yeah.
So breath work can be the balance. Breath work can train your body to be more calm. And here's another beautiful thing I always love to share about breath work. The breath is the tempo of the body. So if you are hiking and you encounter a bear, let's say, or you're laying in a hammock and you encounter a bear, first thing that happens is your breath leads the way. Your breath goes short. It goes from a diaphragmatic breath, if you're diaphragmatically breathing, which feels like you're breathing into your belly. It goes up to short breaths in your chest and really short breaths. And this triggers your sympathetic nervous system, or triggers you to go into fight or flight. When we go into fight or flight, our ability to think, our ability to reason gets turned off, or at least massively blunted. So this is a survival mechanism, because if you're hiking and standing in front of a bear, it's not a time to pause and reflect upon why life has brought you to this moment, right? And nor can you. Or if you step up into the street and you turn and look and there's a bus coming, you don't have time to say, oh, look at that, there's a bus, what should I do?
Yeah.
Right? The body, it turns off all those capacities just instantaneously, and you get a response. So the power in knowing this is, if you have ever been sitting at work, a lot of times I see this at work, you're sitting at work and you're like, man, I cannot fucking think right now. I just can't think. I don't know what's up. I gotta get out of it. That's evidence that you're in a very heightened space of stress. And it's an opportunity for you to say, how am I breathing? How am I breathing right now? It's opportunity for you to become aware of how you're breathing and then take action on how you're breathing. And you breathe, you slow down your breathing, make sure it's all nasal, extend your exhales, do it for 10 breaths, do it for 4 minutes. I'm telling you, it's impossible that it doesn't change how you're feeling in the system of your body. Which brings me, if I may, and we can come back and finish with breath work, to kind of the tagline I have with my clients, is that because everything starts with awareness, we can't change anything that we're not aware of. So awareness is a beautiful gift, and it's a starting point. And then after awareness requires action, because having a recipe and not baking a cake is worthless, right? So when you have awareness of and take accountability for your breath, you command your physiology. When you have awareness of and take accountability for the quality of your thoughts, you command your emotional energetic state. You are the answer. Command your breath, command your thoughts, command your energy, command your life. All right, you are the answer. And so breath work to me it was only a few years ago. It was probably 5 years ago that I started doing it through Wim Hof, through Soma breath work, different versions. And then I finally, a couple of years ago, said this modality has got to be, after I did my first transformational breath work, beautifully enough with Lucas Mack and Hella Weston of Awaken Breathwork. I came back and I told Sarah, I'm doing this, and we decided to do it together. But I'm like, it's time. This is everything, and it became so foundationally important for everything in my life. But breathwork is breathing is so important.
Yeah, and it's just so accessible. It's one of those things that I don't recommend. Yeah, and I don't recommend Bufo or ayahuasca to people when they're struggling with things. That's a calling. Mushrooms, psychedelics are a calling, because sometimes you can force those types of things and see things a little too soon before you're ready to experience them. That is possible. But with the breath, you hold the gas pedal. It's as simple as, if you are seeing too much or experiencing too much, you just slow down the breathing. You just return back to normal. And very quickly, your whole experience will slow back down. I've had some radical experiences on breathwork myself. Oftentimes I scream. For me, it's just like the primal, just kind of thing. I did a breathwork 2 months ago, and I was in a dome here in Vancouver Island in the woods. Very hippie shit. And I was the only man in there, and there were 5 women. And we were all doing breath work, and in the middle of it, I just started screaming my head off. And what's really cool about doing breath work in a group setting is that it triggers what other people's experiences will trigger experiences. So hearing my scream triggered shit in each one of these women, whether it was fear from their father screaming at them and they didn't realize that was stuck in their body, to, permission for them to scream in their power too, you know?
Yeah.
And so when that happens, then we are releasing these energies. Sometimes it's as simple as just vocalizing it, but how often in daily life can you walk down the street and just scream your fucking head off?
If you're in LA, you can do it, but it's one of the reasons why we moved to California. I didn't want to go to LA because I'm like, what is happening with these people screaming in the middle of nowhere? But yeah, it absolutely so accessible, and it just shows you again. It's everything to me for my clients to say you are the answer. Everything you have, you're the answer. Everything you need exists within you, including the answers. In meditations, I'll guide people all the time to standing in front of themselves, asking themselves, "What do I need in this moment?" and receive. And they'll come out and they'll be like, "Oh man, yeah, I just need peace. I just need to stand in my wholeness," or whatever it is, but it comes through them. I'm not saying, now ask yourself, what do you need? And listen to yourself say confidence. I'm just saying, ask yourself, what do you need? And it's just like when you're tapping it, like you were saying, you tap into the breath work, and if these things start coming through, and it's all in you. It's all in you.
It's all
of it. So,
Greg, I think that's a really beautiful place to leave the listener on this particular podcast. I'm really grateful for this. I'm curious, how can the listener get in touch with you or work with you if some of the things that they heard today resonated?
Yeah, best way to get a hold to explore these topics or the potential of working together would be to email me, greg@forgottentruthcoaching.com. And the forgotten truth is you're the answer, right? We forget this basic truth. So greg@forgottentruthcoaching.com, which is also my website. And on the socials, probably the best one is Instagram, and that's at Meditation Junkie. So Meditation Junkie for where I post up and kind of drop. I'm not this. What I'm not is this social media monster. What I am is I use social media to express when it's time to express, when there's something that needs to come out, and so I don't do tons and tons there, but when I have some topic that keeps coming up, like I said, this comparison, this is going to get, I'll drop a video later today, most likely on comparison, because the idea keeps coming up to me. And when it keeps coming up, it's like, okay, it's time to express it. So Meditation Junkie on Instagram, greg@forgottentruthcoaching.com or forgottentruthcoaching.com.
Amazing. Greg, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
The opportunity to express with you, brother.
You bet. And to the listener, thank you. And I hope to see you again on another episode of the Hard for Life show. See you soon.
Cheers, brother.